So we heard some news this week that Ace Frehley or Ace Frehley, however you pronounce his last name, one of the superstar lead guitarists of Kiss had passed away after a fall. And I have this here. Got this at one of the local toy stores, probably about 6 months ago. But I wanted to collect all of the Kiss action figures, if you will. I've got them all. I usually kind of put them in the back here to kind of display, but this tells you like exactly how big Kiss was with marketing. I think they used to say that Gene Simmons was the strong force behind all of the Kiss marketing, and it's kind of funny because like I think I remember one time saying that he would think of like selling caskets and things like that. Whatever he could do to make money, he was going to figure out a way to market it. Also, it seems like I remember a time where Kiss was trying, they were thinking of a way to keep the legacy going long after that they had all retired, probably dead and gone, and things like that. How do we turn Kiss into more of a business, more of a marketing thing within music rather than just a band? And it seemed like at one time they had mentioned something about, and honestly, I would have to find these interviews, but I pick up on bits and pieces of this as I kind of go, and I kind of file it away mentally, but this was stuff that I heard years ago, so I probably can't even point you to any of the interviews that where I heard this from. But it seems like at one point they were thinking of like interviewing and I guess trying out rehearsing their replacements to keep the Kiss brand going, because obviously like what Kiss turned into was the guys in the makeup and the cool outfits and things like that. And so, like when you look at like Ace Frehley here, and they all had like their own characters. That Kiss really became more of the characters than the musicians and the men behind the makeup. Now, of course, when they were unmasked in the early '80s, I think the saying was, "Wow, they should have, ooh, all right, wasn't really expecting that." Not the best looking guys in the world, but the music still lived on. Although I would definitely say that the early, probably the '70s Kiss with the makeup and all that stuff was definitely the best era of that band. Such great music coming out of that era of Kiss. But I was an '80s guy, so I grew up listening to '80s music. I loved all sorts of '80s music, but I really got into of course, the hair bands and hair metal, if you will. And I really I loved some of the Kiss songs of the '80s. "Heaven's on Fire," "A Reason to Live." What else? "Forever." That song I just kept playing, looped. So there's some good songs during that late '80s era as well that were pretty good from Kiss. And of course, I remember the reunion, the Psycho Circus reunion. They came out with that song, Psycho Circus, in the '90s, and man, I thought that was a fantastic song. I was like, oh wow, this is really getting the band not only as a reunion back together, but really as that makeup style Kiss era, and I loved it. It's kind of short lived though. I mean, Kiss did come out with I don't know how many more albums they came out with after that, but I do remember another album, a big album that they came out with years later. Actually, it might have been It might have been last decade. I would have to go back and look, but you know, this kind of shows me of how big bands like Kiss got. And you think of some of the other bands out there that have gotten so big, through the years, and they're timeless. Journey is one of those other bands. Unfortunately for Journey, you know, really not having your original guys in there. And I know the Kiss kind of went through that as well, but they kind of went through that later on, and I would dare say probably were not as successful as they were with all the original guys in there. But Journey, huge band. Everything kind of came to an end with them by the late '80s. Reunion in the '90s, all original members. Well, not really all original members, but all of the original members from the Escape album and up. And you know, really good album that just kind of went away. They could have been much bigger, I think. More in the '90s and even in the 2000s had Steve Perry stayed. Honestly, I think they would have still had air play. I think they would have still been somewhat relevant, even though that they were older. And in popular music, age has a lot to do with it. By the time you get to a certain age, you're too old to relate to the teens that are listening to this music, early 20s, college kids and stuff like that. They listen to music that relates to them, and it's kind of pointed more toward them, toward things that they like. And so, when you get to be more of a mature band, you kind of, start uh, writing songs about just things in life that probably people in their 30s and 40s kind of care about more than people in their teens and their 20s. And although Journey, if you go back and you listen to, let's say, the Frontiers album, for instance, those are songs that still relate to no matter what season of life you're in. And I think that's one reason why that they were so big. Think about other bands like U2 were huge. The only thing I didn't like about U2 is that they became, I don't know, it's like it was kind of a good thing and the bad thing. And it's kind of what made them popular, but at the same time, what I didn't really care about was like a political statement. And later on, it's kind of like, well, that's kind of how Bruce Springsteen, with Born in the USA, all these years, we all thought, man, it was like the most patriotic song ever. And really, when you start listening to it, it's like, no, this is a protest song. Really, it was. But nowadays, I don't. I can't sit here and tell you of any rock bands. It's like rock is gone. And I believe rock is gone because you have certain high level people in the music business that have come from certain genres. I think, Jay-Z, certainly Diddy was a part of this as well. But you have certain people who have a huge amount of influence on what gets pushed and what doesn't. And if they come from a certain genre of music, they're going to push their certain genre of music, or they're going to push with what they feel like is going to benefit them the most. And as the old saying goes, repetition, you keep hearing it until you start to believe it, or, until you start to like it. And that's what's kind of happened is a certain genre of music has been pushed for really the last 20 years. And since that point, it's like, that's all that you really hear on the radio. I mean, you don't hear like all, and what I'm saying is you don't necessarily hear like all rap music, but you hear a lot of hip hop and, hip hop and pop, no rock whatsoever, no rock at all. And it's kind of sad because even in the 80s, like, I grew up, started listening to rock music in the 80s, but, I kept it on the radio stations all the time. And, they played everything. Like there was rap music in the 80s. There was, of course, pop, there was rock music, there was metal and all this stuff. And all of it got played. Now, I will say during the late 80s, you did hear a lot of what you call the hair metal on all of the top 40 channels. That's just what was popular. But that was only for like really a half a decade. So you're thinking about a good 5 years, and not even that hardly, that you had hair metal that kind of ran the airwaves. And then when grunge came in, grunge took over, and then that's all you heard. But a really weird thing happened about that time that grunge came in, because I think grunge was so polarizing with fans of rock music that you either really loved it or you really hated it. There was no in between. And because of that, a lot of people who were into the hair metal bands and rock music in general then kind of start shifting their love of music toward country. Now, why did they shift their love of music toward country? Well, at that time, Garth Brooks hit his biggest stride of popularity. It came out, I think it was 1990. He came out with No Fences, with Friends in Low Places, Thunder Rolls, um, you know, songs like that, and it really it really almost played a little bit into kind of a rockish style of country music. It wasn't all like the twangy stuff that you would normally hear. It was more of a kind of a different style of country music that was more. It really honestly brought more young people into the fold, and so people really flocked to it. And because of that, country music of the 90s, I think, really started getting very popular and a lot better, in my opinion. Now, of course, if you grew up listening to country music all your life, you may have a different opinion. You may feel like 70s and 80s was better, but 90s music with country really brought in a lot of people, and so because of that, the I remember our biggest top 40 radio station that we could pick up that was in a nearby city decided, you know what, we're changing our format. We're going away from regular top 40 to country. And so they changed to country, and that really brought a lot of people more into country. Now, the other top 40 station that was big like them stayed with, um, the regular format, but you started hearing all of what they call new rock, alternative rock, the rock alternative. And so, suddenly no hair bands or anything like that. My whole point, getting back to all of this, was that there was such a change in what was popular during that time, late 80s to all throughout the 90s. Um, Even a lot of, hip hop and stuff like that, and 90s soul, that all of that really started taking off, becoming extremely popular amongst young people and stuff like that. And really, since that point, it has held on and has only gotten bigger to the point to where it's pushed out any type of rock music. Anything that's guitar driven, basically, it's really pushed it out. And it's so sad because I'm a lover of music, right? Just because that I'm 50 years old doesn't mean that suddenly I have to stop listening to music. Now, I will say, majority of the music that I do listen to, I keep going back to the stuff that I listened to as I was in my 20s, and so you're kind of going to get that, partly because it's kind of a nostalgia. It's taking you back to times of your youth and things like that, and that's honestly, when you start to get into my age group, that's kind of the reason why you listen to some of this music is, well, number one, you said it's good, and number two, it kind of takes you back to a time when you were young. And so, it's kind of a nostalgia type of thing. But besides that, I am always on the hunt for good new music. And it doesn't mean that it has to be rock music. But if it's something that really catches my attention and gets me to sing in it, and has a good, what they call what is it, the earworm thing, where it's like, the it's got a certain type of pop chord progression that gets into your head and you just can't get it out of your head, and so you really start to like it because of that. So basically, what I'm saying is, if it sounds good, I'll listen to it. Um, I'm not much into listening to music where there's profanity like every other word, or they have to use profanity in it. I would prefer the cleaner version, just because, like, I've got a son who likes music, and I don't want to play him a song, even that I might like the song, but I don't want to play it for him because it's got cussing in it. And so that's what I don't like about today's music, is like explicit lyrics almost on everybody. Even Taylor Swift has explicit lyrics on her music, and I just don't get it. I don't. It's a different time, man. It's really a different time when you have to, in order for someone to really like your music, you got to have that E on at least one of your songs, so you can, it's like a secret handshake, so you can be cool and you can make money. But I don't like that. I don't like it at all. And I'm not a fuddy-duddy. I've listened to music that's had some explicit lyrics in it, but I like it better when I could play it and it's not going to be offensive to anybody, obviously. And I think that's the other reason why I did like music from my youth and my 20-something hood, is that a lot of music was, if they had to have some sort of adult theme to it, they kind of used more innuendos. So you can kind of, okay, I understand what they're talking about. They're using innuendos, don't just go right out and saying it, right? Nowadays, they go right out and say it, and no matter how tacky it sounds. And I just don't like that. Again, I'm probably a fuddy-duddy for saying that, but I think overall, my biggest thing is that I wished in today's music we had artists coming up that are going to be generational artists, that really, everybody will recognize 30 years down the road. Maybe you won't necessarily have them having action figures like Kiss did, but maybe, at least artists and bands that 30 years down the road, you'll be like, oh man, I remember the first time I heard a song from them. They turned out to be so huge. And yeah, bands. I think that's the last point. Bands. I want to see more music bands. Bands are usually tied more toward rock, I understand. And yes, I want to hear more rock music. I don't want to hear just hip hop, just rap. I'm going to see another explosion of rock music back on the scene. I want to see a variety, because I think, for me, honestly, and I can only speak for myself, but I feel like when you have more of a variety of music that is pushed, that is made popular, number one, it exposes people to different types of tastes and gets them more of an eclectic taste. And I think it also opens up their minds a little bit more. But I think, too, well, as I'll piggyback on that last statement, opens up your mind, I'm more apt to appreciate different genres of music when they're all being put on display and pushed, and giving me, the consumer, a choice of being able to listen to different things rather than just one thing being pushed, and that's all that's ever being pushed. And then whatever music that I want to find, I have to go out on YouTube and find it, and it's usually, it's like, why is this not being pushed? Well, just the music industry of today doesn't push that type of music. And so, you appreciate these artists staying true to what they like and putting out this music, but at the same time, they don't last because they can't make any money off of it, and so it eventually goes away. I think that's what's happening with the what they call the AOR genre of music, the adult arena rock type of music, as they call it, arena rock music, melodic rock. There was a big resurgence of that in the 2000s, and a lot of that coming out from Germany and Sweden, England, places like that. Never really got that much more popular again here in the States, because the States are pretty locked down when it comes to what they will push. And now it's like, they just can't make enough money to really keep that going. And there's been some fantastic artists in that genre that you'll only ever know if you look for them on YouTube, and maybe they'll have their music out on Spotify and Apple Music. But, other than that, outside of that, they're never played on the radio. And I know people are like, well, you still listen to radio? I was like, you know what? Radio's still out there. There's still a reason why terrestrial radio is still, that's the reason why that they haven't, moved and just closed up shop. There's still a need for that radio, and they still play this music, and that's the reason why that people are still able to hear this stuff. But yeah, I do recognize the music industry in itself has changed, and there's a lot of obstacles that are in place that are keeping these artists from really being able to break out. And I think there's a time for a great reset of the music industry, and I would love to see all the corruption and everything just cleaned out, and just a big reset to where suddenly you have all types of genres being pushed, not just rap and not just hip hop, not just whatever form of country they have nowadays, but rock music again, and just something for everybody, so that I don't know, it's just feel like music is always something that brings people together. And I feel like even in music now, they're trying to separate people as much as they possibly can. And I think that's sad. So rest in peace, though, Ace Frehley. Rest in peace. You were a fantastic guitarist. I just hope that we can have some fantastic bands put back in place, or to carry the torch, I would say, from these other bands that are unfortunately dying out, retired. It's sad to say, but I feel like once a lot of these bands are gone, and that's probably going to happen in the next few years, unless there is a resurgence, a reset in music, you may never hear anything else other than the one genre of music that's being pushed, and that's pretty sad. So let me know in the comments what you think about all this. Give me your best, if you're a Kiss fan, give me your best memory of going to see them. I never got to see them live, so I'd love to kind of live vicariously through you. That said, I will see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.